cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it. So explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it. No scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool. Hear my heartbeat beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones. Bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Once again with your host, Nick Bernabe, here on ucy.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. Really happy to be back, alive and well on this May 17th, 2017, in one of the most interesting times to be alive in U.S. history and probably world history, because we're on the cutting edge of technology. I guess every moment is kind of the most interesting time to be alive, because technology is always advancing. You know, I guess when people first invented the telephone, I bet they were kind of like, you know, with the telegram and all that, like, oh my God, this is so cool. People in the past were never able to call somebody on the other side of the country on a phone. It's so amazing. Crazy, changes our communication. And, you know, obviously now with the internet and all these interesting things going on, with these new technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, you know, smartphones and all the other things, makes it a very interesting time. We got access to instantaneous information. Most people, many people don't really utilize it as much as they could be utilizing it, but it's there. And, you know, this is what we're dealing with. We are the Anti-Media. We are a new media company, so we're born and raised in this kind of new internet-based media realm, social media realm of things. So this is very interesting with this crazy, insane political upheaval going on here. And again, more and more, we're seeing the establishment, the deep state, in their attempts to do what they're doing with the whole Trump/Russia ordeal. I mean, it's just going to be an interesting show tonight, because there's just so many things going on. I don't even know where to start. But, you know, the chatter is undeniable at this point. Talk of impeaching Donald Trump is now starting to become pretty common. But I guess the question begs to be asked: do we want to have Mike Pence as a president? Which honestly seems worse. And now I'm starting to get to like having Trump in office. Not that I like him or his policies or anything, but I don't mind seeing the government in complete disarray. I mean, it's kind of a interesting paradox here, because you guys all know that I come from an anarchist point of view. And so seeing all this chaos and seeing the machine go up to bat against itself, that to me is very interesting. And I've seen several commentators, including the amazing Dan Sanchez, remark on this about, maybe this is kind of cool that Trump is so under siege, because it kind of renders him somewhat ineffective on many, many things. Now, of course, it doesn't stop the fact that he's going and sealing $100 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia, at the same time going over there and acting like he's going to stop ISIS. So, that doesn't get any criticism, just like it didn't under Obama. I mean, I think people don't even realize that Obama was the biggest arms dealing president, I think, for decades, if not ever. I mean, he sold so many arms to Saudi Arabia and Israel and other people that it's just ridiculous what Obama did. But Trump, Trump is a businessman, and I think maybe he could even cut more deals than Obama. $100 billion in arms to Saudi Arabia, barely a mention of it in the media, and definitely no criticism. However, of course, the anti-Russian, Russia controls the election, Russia controls Trump, Russia does everything apparently. Russia is taking over the world with its economy that's like 1/20th the size of ours, and a military budget that's like 1/10 the size of ours, and basically no competition to us. They're still being treated as if they're the boogeyman that we need to build up against, as if the Cold War lives on.
The old nuclear football, Nick.
Yeah, there you go. That being said, let's introduce our panel. We've got our awesome longtime co-host, D.B. Schwartz, back from a leave of absence. Apparently you were traveling around the world, man. Tell us a little bit about what you saw, where you went.
I just went on a whirlwind, fucking back and forth within 120 hours to halfway around the world and back. I went to New York, and then on to Lisbon, Portugal, and then from there Barcelona, Rome, Naples, back to Barcelona, back to Lisbon, back to New York, all within like 120 hours or something like that. So it was kind of crazy, and saw a bunch of crazy stuff and met cool people and got new perspective on basically everything. I mean, one thing I noticed is that Europe, for all the super far right-wing propaganda we're getting over here, is for the most part pretty chill in the areas I was, and that's the closest part to where this supposed refugee crisis is. But I was not in Germany, so I did not see what's going on over there. But from what I'm seeing, it's people are staunchly cultural and they really love their country, and that in itself is like the biggest insult you could ever have, more than any military, because I'll tell you, you do see homeless people, but there's just not that many, and you get the feeling like people have huge families and they just take care of each other, dude, and it's something we've gotten away from, and I kind of miss it. Interesting. Yeah, the cultural differences between the U.S. and Europe are very, very different, very vast. The United States is kind of it's become one of those places where people don't really leave their houses much. They kind of just stick to their own. Very little sense of community going on. Except, of course, there are pockets of areas where there's a high sense of community, but generally speaking, and Americans are afraid people. The way that we're brainwashed is to be afraid of other groups of people that are outside of the United States, except for, I guess, Europeans. But, there was a poll that was done a couple years ago, but it's still relevant. It showed that the average American is more afraid to go outside on a day-to-day basis than your average Egyptian. And the fact of the matter is, Egypt is a much, much more dangerous place than the United States, much more violent. There are terror attacks on a relatively regular basis. They've had several revolutions just in the past couple years. And, Egypt isn't exactly a safe place compared to the United States, but the people there are less afraid to go outside, and
be in their community and do things with other people, around other people, than the average American. I think that a lot of it has to do with just the conditioning and the brainwashing, especially the post 9/11 stuff. But this has been going on since the Cold War. You know, post World War II, we've been in a constant, we've been under a constant fear-mongering regimen from the military-industrial complex. I guess, you know, the deep state, the people that run the show, the people that control the politicians and stuff. They've been keeping us afraid because that's how they make all their money, right? You get us afraid. Oh, we're afraid of Koreans. We're afraid of Vietnamese.
Because our only industry is arms sales.
Yeah, we're afraid of Russians. We're afraid of Mexicans. We're afraid of Muslims. I mean, you name it. And who haven't we been brainwashed to be afraid of? Even though none of those groups, like no country out of those groups have attacked us. Sure, there have been terror attacks and stuff. But they haven't been like state actors. Russia hasn't attacked us. China hasn't attacked us. Vietnam, they never attacked us either. In fact, we got into the Vietnam War based on the Gulf of Tonkin, which wound up being a false flag. Korea never attacked us. You know, and so we're tricked into believing all this fear-mongering stuff so that these guys can keep on building up arms. And every now and then they have to go use up the arms and start a war so that they can replace the arms that they've already built.
And we never win on purpose.
Yeah, and ever since the 50s, ever since World War II, because, you know, many people, many economic commentators will say that World War II brought the U.S. out of that depression, right? And so after the Depression, nobody wanted to go back to the Depression, right? Everyone's like, well, what are we going to do? Well, let's have a permanent war industry where we become the biggest arms manufacturer and arms dealer in the world, and let's make
but
that.
But it's not war, Nick, because it's the Department of Defense.
Yeah, it's defense.
So we never legally ever declare war, so we never have a draft, so we'll never have a protest or an armed rebellion here. And there'll always be a fresh crop of volunteers because there's always going to be poor people.
Always going to be poor people who can't hardly make it on a minimum wage. And the recruiter comes along to your high school and you're like, hey, dude, you're living with your mom and your 4 siblings in a 2-bedroom apartment. Why don't you join the military and you'll be able to afford a house out in some weird place in the middle of nowhere, you know? And people are like, yeah, dude, shit. I may not agree with what you guys are doing, but I do agree with getting paid. And so, yeah, it's just, you know.
Don't forget about that $18,000 GI Bill, Nick. It pays for like 1 semester.
Yeah. You know, and since World War II, the military industrial complex, the arms manufacturers, they took control of most things because they after World War II, they took control of the economy. So then they took control of the politicians. They took over control of the media. They took over control of the curriculum in the schools, the shit that we're taught. I mean, at this point, it's all fear-mongering. It's all like, well, America is the greatest country in the world. We're the freest. We're the richest. We're the nicest. We have the best government. But everywhere else around the world sucks, except for Europe. Everyone else sucks. Russia sucks. You know, China sucks. Asia sucks. Latin America sucks. Muslims suck. And so we have to build up a huge military just in case those sucky people try to hurt us. And the truth of the matter is like, no, they're not actually hurting us. We're hurting them. And then when we create refugees with our foreign policy, then we blame them because we're hurting them. Like this propaganda is so deep and so good, not good, but it's so effective that people in the United States believe in an alternate reality. So first,
don't forget that.
So, Jake, what's up, man?
What? No, that was DB.
Well,
oh no, I was just gonna add in one last thing, which is don't forget that their own sleeper cells are now gonna intermingle with legitimate immigrants, and then we're gonna have an internal struggle too.
Yeah. So, DB, on that topic, I mean, did you notice while you were in Europe? Did you notice that people were less indoctrinated as far as like from a foreign policy standpoint? Did you see anything like that?
Well, the government. Well, here's the thing: these countries are vastly different, even though they are very culturally similar in a lot of ways. But I mean, Portugal is literally like the second world. It's not really the first world, super hyper advanced technology or anything. Definitely not the third world, high standard of living. But just like people there are chill. It's like the California of the 70s, honestly, the whole country. So a lot of solar, a lot of wind power starting to be built. They're phasing out fossil fuels because they know it's not going to last, and they really don't have a military. So, I mean, pot's legal there, so it's really California-like. I would also...
It's kind of like, it's like the west coast of Europe, too.
Yeah, exactly, and it's the same mentality, laid back, surfing.
Even weather is the same, too, right?
Yeah, it's very similar weather, too. So Spain, Nick, because I think you've been there, right?
I actually haven't, dude. I have never been.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, well, I mean, Spain's just the mother country. It's just Mexico on steroids, I guess you could say, right? But with like 2,000 years of culture. And it's very laid back as well, but just super cultured, super ancient. I was only in Barcelona, but I mean, they have churches that are like 1,500 years old still standing. And all the cliches about them eating dinner at like 10 and 11 o'clock at night and partying until 4 every day are true. And it's fun, man. It's just a different kind of lifestyle. But one thing I really have to stress is Italy has to be, seriously, to this day even, one of the richest, most militarily powerful and economically powerful countries. It's just, there's every 3 to 4 blocks, there's a couple of armored, like, personnel carriers and people with just, like, full-on, like, submachine guns. And one of the guys I was talking to said, everybody has a pistol at home. We just don't take them out because if the military sees you with a gun, they sees you as a threat, and they have a submachine gun. So I'm like, all right, I get it, dude. But like, it's a different culture there for sure. Like, they're paranoid about being like invaded. They have great self-defense, and that's maybe what we need to get back to.
That's interesting. I didn't realize Italy was so militaristic. I know there is a big U.S. military presence in Italy still.
Yeah, but God, it's a citadel, dude. Like, there's troops everywhere, but they're like talking to the people, and the people are totally comfortable around that. And if anybody was stupid enough to invade, I could only imagine the response they'd get.
They'd get the boot. No, I'm just kidding.
They would. They get that high heel right up the you-know-what.
Yeah, so, I've never been to Europe. I've always been interested in going. But in the meantime, shit has been just going haywire as if it weren't crazy enough.
Tell me about it. Flying into New York City was like flying into the new, I swear to God, when you come in with your new passport, they take a picture of you like this robot, dude, takes a picture of you, and then you go through various, like, you go through a first and then a secondary. And I can only imagine what people from certain other, like, of these high risk countries have to go through to come through, I didn't really breeze through, but I mean, I'm sure other people had a tough time, and, that's New York City for you, but they have reason to, I guess, be extra cautious. But you can tell there's just a different pulse. When I was in New York City prior to 9/11, God, it was just like way different. Now it's very, very, very corporate and very organized.
That's crazy, man. I've never even been to New York City. I need
World Trade Center 1 is just, it looks like the Eye of Sauron, dude. It's freakish.
It's crazy. I've only been, the big city I've been to on the East Coast is probably Philadelphia. It's the closest I've been to New York City.
Yeah, I don't know, man. You should go to New York City. It's pretty crazy.
Portugal sounds cool, though. I'd be interested in going there. But anyway, let's get into some of this stuff. Jake, what do you think, dude? Is Trump going to be impeached? Are we going to get stuck with Mike Pence or what?
Yeah. If I were to place a bet right now with no odds, just a straight up call, I'd say he's going to be impeached, or he's going to be forced to resign. If they're coming at him this strong, it's just relentless, man. He's clearly like not the pick of the deep state. Like, there's no reason they'd be spending this amount of resources. I mean, they're literally like embedding anti-Trump people everywhere from the look of it. it's just every day it's a new thing, like a new scandal with him. Unless maybe I mean, I think the one thing that can save him is a real terrorist attack. If he tries to do a false flag, they'll take him down on war crimes, and then, that'll save their own asses from any accusations of false flags, because they'll be like, well, we stopped one, So that'd be perfect for them, but I don't think he'd be stupid enough to try and do that, even though Noam Chomsky had said maybe he'll do that. I don't even think even Trump would have the hubris to try and do a false flag under these pretexts. But I think they're going to take him down, man. They're just relentless. They obviously want him gone, and they have the power. They have all the mechanisms in place to take him down. It doesn't matter that Republicans have control. It's an establishment thing, and even though I don't like him and I don't think it's a good thing what he's trying to do, he's against the establishment, and they're going to take him down.
What about this guy today getting put into this special Homeland Security detail? I mean, I swear, like they're trying to pull this last-minute brown shirts movement or something.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I don't think there's any way.
Clark.
I mean, I think people will probably be writing about this for years and years in the future. Like what's going on right now will be the subject of countless conspiracy theories that'll last decades, because it's really pretty remarkable, the collusion that's going on to take this president down. And again, I'm saying this as an outside observer who's pretty liberal. I mean, certainly, more liberal than I am conservative or libertarian or anything like that. I'm saying this objectively. I don't like the Democrats at all. I don't like Pence. I think Pence is actually more dangerous, to be honest with you. I agree, Nick, with your point that right now Trump is essentially neutralizing the government. He is doing some damage, but he's essentially neutralizing the government, because all of the might of the deep state that would be spent on pushing some kind of new geopolitical platform is being used, against Trump. And I don't know, man. This is historic. I mean, we've never seen anything like this before.
Big thing going on, and going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the show. Yeah, every moment in time, in current reality is a cutting edge moment, right? Yeah, we're at the forefront of technology that all human beings have accumulated throughout civilization. But politically speaking, this is a very, very important time. And so I want to take a step back here and kind of look at kind of the big picture, what's going on here with Trump, Russia, and the deep state and everybody. So first of all, there's like from what I could tell, Cold War type of mentality going on. And think of it like this: the military-industrial complex, right? The people that we've been talking about, the deep state. They took over the economy after World War II. They had their Korean War. They had of course, the Vietnam War. But they had this Cold War going on ever since, basically, Korea. And there's been little skirmishes here and there. We've toppled a few governments, a couple dozen governments. We've been doing all kinds of covert things in Iran, South America, Latin America. And this Cold War really was a gravy train for the military-industrial complex. I mean, you got this huge enemy in the Soviet Union who, were constantly being told that, they're going to take over the world, and the communism is, the Red Scare and all this crap had been going on for forever and ever and ever. Kids used to go and hide under their desk because they were saying, they'd run drills about when the Soviet Union was going to have nuclear strikes. I mean, they were ramming this propaganda into the heads of our parents from day one. And so Russia, if you put all of that propaganda, capital you don't want to just let it go to waste. So, Russia, even though it is compared to the United States, it's not a threat. Their military is tiny, their economy is tiny. They're basically a second world country. But all that propaganda capital has been invested in. Who wants to let an investment go to waste? I'll tell you, the military-industrial complex does not. So now that the war on terror kind of wore off, Russia is an easy target because the baby boomers, all of them are basically be on board with this because they've all been brainwashed to hate Russia for a very, very long time.
So paratroop them in and get rid of our healthcare crisis.
Right? So to me, that's why it makes sense that this thing with Russia is kind of resurging, because you look back, just only back to the 2012 election, right? If you remember the debate between Obama and Romney, where Romney was talking about, oh, well, Russia, we got to worry about Russia. Russia's an upcoming threat. And Obama was like calling him stupid about it. Like, dude, like, what are you living? The 1980s call, they want their talking points back. Obama said something like hilarious like that. But at the time, it was like they looked at everybody was talking about Romney like, well, Romney's crazy. The Russians are nothing. The Russians aren't going to do anything. But after a while, I guess with Obama, the war on terror just started to become so worn out. And people are just so like tired of the war on terror. It's like just the more war on terror you wage, the more terrorists exist. People are tired of it. And so, in my opinion, I think what we're looking at from a further back standpoint here, not looking micro at what's going on with Trump, just today and tomorrow and yesterday, but from a bigger point of view here, I think the military-industrial complex is trying to pivot from the Middle East and the war on terror and trying to pivot back to dealing with Russia and making Russia into the big boogeyman that we have to build up against and contain and therefore, rationalize all of our military spending and all that stuff. And so that's what it feels like to me is going on. Now, where I think Trump fits in on this is that Trump has all these ties, business ties, to Russia and the Baltics. I mean, his wife isn't she from one of the Baltic states, I think? Those areas have close historical and cultural ties to the Soviet Union and Russia and stuff. I think Trump is friendly towards Russia. I still have yet to see any proof that Russia intervened and helped Trump win the election. But I do think that Trump is a Russia-friendly candidate and president. So that's where I think Trump has gotten in the way of the deep state, is where they're trying to create Russia as this new boogeyman. Since the people are tired of fighting the war on terror, they want to switch back over to Russia. Trump has kind of gotten in the way of that, even though he's going along with most of the other stuff, including expanding the war on terror, which now is starting to become not as popular. Trump's getting in the way of Russia.
But they're getting a different kind of scare in there, which is they're because of Trump and this collusion theory, they're actively being able to leverage Russia as someone who's meddling in our election. So they're still turning it to be anti-Russia, and they're still using it.
Exactly. And so they're using Trump's friendliness towards Russia as a tool to make him look like he's been compromised by Russia.
Well, as long as they get to keep Syria in their sphere, they don't care how much of the rest of the Middle East. They can both bomb each other and use it as a big giant proxy chessboard, and they can unleash all their new toys on each other, and it'll be a big fun time for the MIC in Russia and here.
Yeah. And
they don't give a crap if their own troops die. They could care less, especially if they can knock out a whole bunch of millions of people in the Middle East.
Yeah, dude, that's what sucks, is that there's a bunch of regular people getting used as cannon fodder for the clash of military-industrial complexi. How else do you
just for profit, because they
complex.
Can't win.
Yeah, dude.
What are they going to win? Scorched earth and oil that's worthless?
Yeah, it's just like a clash of military industrial complexes, and they get to go and waste a bunch of resources and make a bunch of profit, and a bunch of people that wind up being wherever these guys choose to have their battleground end up dying. And
then they wonder why Kim Jong-un hoards uranium mortars all around with these two crazy giant psychopathic nations, dude, that just like fight back and forth. And then China with a massive military that can overrun them at any time. And then people wonder why Iran tries to get nukes, dude. It's like if you don't have nukes, you just get invaded and destroyed eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I mean, it's no wonder why. I don't blame North Korea for being what it is. If I was North Korea, I would probably think in the same way. I mean, the U.S. already went over there and invaded once. You know, you want to stop them from invading again. This is the same exact reason why Iran is become so, defensive and paranoid, is because of the stuff that we've done. I mean, Iran used to be a pretty moderate place, man. Like if you go back to before the Shah, I can't remember the guy's name, unfortunately, but there was a guy who was democratically elected president in Iran before the Shah, which was the guy that the U.S. put in power.
Mohammed Mossadegh, I think.
Yeah. During that time, Iran was a very moderate place, man. Like, the people had a lot of civil liberties. It was a thriving place. The guy made the mistake of trying to nationalize the oil industry when the British and the United States owned most of it, and the guy nationalized the oil industry, and the US and the British went in and just overthrew them, and that's what happened.
He picked the wrong time to nationalize oil.
Yeah, and since then, a movement began, which was an anti-Western movement, and that's what wound up overthrowing the Shah eventually, which was the U.S.-backed puppet. And since then, they've become extremely isolated, paranoid, and defensive, just like North Korea. And they have reason to. Like if the United States, if we had a government that would finally just come clean and say, you know what, Iran, we're genuinely sorry about what we did. We're going to end all the sanctions. We're going to take all of our military bases from around your border, and we want to just have an economic relationship with you guys and be friends. And all the beef would be gone tomorrow. Like that would happen. But these guys instead would rather create hype about, oh, what's Iran going to do? Is Iran building a nuclear weapon? Is Iran going to attack Israel? Is Iran going to fire on our ships? And so they want to keep scaring us and thinking, oh, well, you see Iran under every, you look under your bed at night to see if Iran or Russia are hiding underneath your bed to make sure that you're safe. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how they want you to think, because then you don't question the fact that they're building up massive arms. And sooner or later, you can only stockpile arms for so long until you start running out of places to put it, and it starts getting old. You got to use this stuff. And so these guys create conflicts just so they could use up the weapons. Like when Trump bombed the airstrip in Syria, I mean, that was just, what was that? It was just, let's just use some weapons real quick, and let's kind of mess up a little air base real quick and not really kill many people or anything, but let's, it was just a waste of a lot of money, really, and a lot of resources, and somebody made a bunch of money on that. Raytheon or whoever the company was that made those missiles, they got rich. And so, you got these, varying, competing factions. And China is going to be definitely the stronger one of the bunch. And what China has done is less of a build-up militarily. Like, the Soviet Union wasted a ton of money trying to build up to compete, to stay relative to the United States. Obviously the United States spends a lot of money on defense. The USSR had to keep up. China never really built up that much military back in the day. They instead invested in economy. And, interestingly enough, they just unveiled their, what do they call it? Basically the new Silk Road. I don't know if you heard of this yet, DB, but they just opened up the railroads all the way into Spain. So now there's railroads that connect from Spain all the way to China. and through the Middle East into Africa. This is what China has been working on, and this is a big. China basically is setting up economically to be the most powerful nation in the world. They're going to.
They were until the year 1800, after they lost the Opium Wars. So they lost 2 Opium Wars, and then Japan invaded and beat the living hell out of them for like 25, 30 years. And they still are. They're still recovering from losing Manchuria, and Japan at one point, that empire was massive, and they were just decimating China. So, I mean, at some point they want to pay back Japan, but that would be another world war. So we can hope for that to not happen, because then we'll get dragged into it. But yeah, it's just volatile, man, because the World War II whole sphere never ended, because Korean War was like World War 2.5. That was an armistice, and then there's still like that demilitarized zone that you can see from space that has more mortars and more buried landmines than anywhere else in the world. So, dude, at some point something will pop off, but maybe we can hope for the best, and like somebody gets sick in North Korea, and then the government there just decides to coalesce with Seoul, but who knows?
Yeah, dude. China has always been like the cow that gets carved up by everybody else. Whether it's Japan, Britain, the Mongolians, it's always kind of been the victim, I guess you could say. But China now is just growing so strong economically. This new Silk Road thing, it's a game changer, man. They're connecting like basically the entire Eastern world through railways that are going to be able to, be a conduit for commerce throughout these entire places, entire continents.
Buy land in Eastern Europe, because the farmland out there is going to be what is going to be going east, since they can't feed their population on their own land anymore. So now there's huge, like just totally undeveloped, massive acres in like Poland and Romania and the Ukraine that they can grow tons and tons of food. And now that I know this rail line's being built out there partly for that too.
Yeah, and so North Korea has been invited to participate in this new Silk Road as well. And this is seen as kind of a move to begin negotiations between China and North Korea to de-escalate what's going on. South Korea has had a recent election. Their president was ousted recently over some corruption stuff. I'm not too familiar with what went on there, but I know that their president was ousted. They got a new president in, and the new president has vowed to try to make things right with North Korea. They want to negotiate. They want to become friendly. They don't want to continue this brinkmanship. The people in Korea, in South Korea, they're sick and tired of what we're doing over there. They're sick and tired of us causing, starting shit between North and South where they're going to be the ones dying. Like, they don't want to be the next Syria. The people there are smarter than that. Like, they're like, hell no, dude. The United States need to leave us alone and let us deal with North Korea. Let the locals work it out and create some kind of peace deal, so that we don't wind up having a Korean War 2.0. And so the new president is trying to soften up ties with North Korea. China is now trying to bring them back to the negotiating table. So, it looks like the United States is the one over there polarizing the situation. And there are several people wondering if it doesn't have anything to do with this new Silk Road, because this new Silk Road thing is a huge, huge economic threat to the United States, because this is going to render us, like the whole thing is, we got a huge navy, the biggest and best navy in the world. I don't even know if all the other countries' navies combined would even equal the United States' navy. Go ahead.
You know what wouldn't surprise me hearing you talk about the Silk Road is what if the play here is that they're gonna get Pence in and then go ahead with the TPP to counter the Silk Road, because that was largely what the TPP was meant as. It was meant as an economic leveraging tool against China economically. So what if the plan here is to end up pushing TPP through? Because I think isn't Pence pro TPP?
He was prior to the election. So, yeah, that is an interesting theory there, because the TPP was meant to be the counterbalance against Chinese economic power. And now that Trump scrapped the TPP, that could be another reason why the deep state is a little bit up in arms about it.
They spent years on that. Literally years they spent secretly negotiating that, and he just came in and ended all of that.
Years.
Because look at what happened. China gave him like all these trademarks. China's been dealing with him like directly to do all kinds of business deals. So of course he scrapped the TPP, because the TPP was really majorly an economic ring around them, where everybody was going to have all these preferential trade deals with everybody else, and they were going to get cut out.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, it sucked for the average American, but it was going to really suck for the average Chinese person. So maybe it was a good thing that it died, period. But I mean, now they're trying to renegotiate NAFTA. Now we all can pretty much expect that the Americo or Amero or whatever stupid currency they want to blend Canada and Mexico with. And how's that going to work? Because the government in Mexico doesn't even function. And really in Canada now they're having huge problems. So, I mean, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, and the U.S. is in the middle of maybe the worst political crisis that we've seen since Watergate, right? Any ideas of having bigger governmental control is just dumb.
And the euro does not work. So in the EU, like when you buy things in Spain, then you go over to Italy, they're like 20% more. So like people can't vacation from Spain into Italy, but everyone in Italy goes over into Spain, and then both of them go over into Portugal, and they kind of act like, people from America do when they vacation in Mexico. They get really drunk.
Oh man. Yeah, dude, so this is a big next couple of weeks. I'm going to see how this stuff plays out. Because it's just going to be a whirlwind. It's going to be a whirlwind of just political upheaval after leak, after tweet, after all these comments going to be made by all these different people. And then where does WikiLeaks fit in all this? I want to bring up something that we talked about on Monday here with Trump and WikiLeaks, Russia. Of course, Seth Rich, the DNC staffer, on Monday, we were on air actually when the story broke, I guess, and they were talking about how an private investigator hired by a third party for the family, was saying that there was evidence of Seth Rich being in communications with WikiLeaks, though of course now the investigator has retracted, or at least walked back some of those statements.
So he didn't want to get shot in the back of the head. He didn't want to shoot himself in the back of the head twice.
Yeah. So again, this adds even more complexity to what's going on, because here's the thing that I find most interesting. It goes back to Julian Assange and the fact that Julian Assange has given more than enough hints, way more than enough hints, that he's trying to hint that Seth Rich was the WikiLeaks source for the emails having to do with the DNC, and maybe possibly even John Podesta. I don't know how much this guy may have handed over. But it definitely seems like Julian Assange is trying to make it look like he was the leaker. Now, is Assange doing that just to try to take heat off of himself in case maybe Russia possibly was the actual source? That's a possibility. The other possibility is that Assange is trying to let the world know that, hey, Seth Rich was our source and he was killed for it. And so this makes the whole thing all the more complicated, because if we're going to go down the rabbit hole here of the deep state and what these guys are capable of, obviously they're capable of assassination. are the same people that carried out what possibly could be an assassination against Seth Rich. Are they the same people, the same deep state actors that are trying to blame Russia for all of the leaks and trying to help Trump win the office? I mean, it's possible. I mean, but this is, we're talking about a big conspiracy here that is going to, and I mean, this just adds more and more to this crazy political climate that we have going on right now in the United States. I mean, we've got, suspected assassinations going on, massive amounts of corruption, collusion between political parties, supposedly Russian oligarchs in some way influencing our election. I mean, we're in a crazy upheaval. It's so hard to deal with all of it, and this is my job, dude. I'm sitting here consuming this information all day, trying to make sense of it all. And there's just so much coming out that you can't even keep track. Like, I can't keep track of it. I'm sitting here looking at this stuff for 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, and I'm not even sure what the hell is going on myself. I mean, it's unprecedented what's happening right now. It's very overwhelming. And I'm having trouble myself really nailing down any concrete theories. Like, I don't have a solid theory right now on what's actually happening. It's like there's so many variables and so many different things going on. Like, what the hell is actually happening here? DB, I mean, what do you have any overriding theory about what's happening right now, or are you kind of stuck?
What's going on? What's going on, DB?
This is just there's the jockeying period before World War II, so there's got to be some winner at some point. I mean, we're not going to just have this stasis like we've had forever. I mean, the U.S. has been stockpiling stuff. Who knows what Japan has? Who knows what China has? I don't know, man. Everybody wants to bring out the big guns, but nobody wants to do it first, because I feel like the person that's the country dumb enough to start something is going to get ganged up on and probably lose their ass. So I think it's a big game of chicken everywhere right now.
Interesting. Jake, same question to you, man. What do you think?
I think, based upon what we've seen, across the world, my guess would be that we're off script to a degree right now. I mean, I think there's definitely an agenda, but it's like, I think they're planning multiple possible variables on how it could play out, because I think they know they can't control exactly what's going to happen right now. There's too many variables. So I definitely think we're off script. And I mean, if I were to guess what's going to happen in the next 10 years, is that they're going to use some kind of, the next big terror attack will be used to, rein in the next era. 15 years ago, 16 years ago, 9/11 changed the entire landscape forever and allowed for the government to do things that they never would have been able to do without a terrorist attack of that size. I think one like that, regardless of whether Trump's president or not, another terrorist attack is going to allow us some leverage on what we're going to do. Remember, Iran was part, and North Korea are part of that axis of evil. And I'm pretty sure Iran was in that original list of countries that the Project for New American Century wanted to take down. There's a couple more that we haven't. So I don't think we're done. I think it's a pretty good theory that they're shifting back to the Cold War style, given that there's pretty widespread consensus right now that this kind of, really disingenuous American imperialism, economic imperialism across the world, there's a lot of blowback to it right now. And so I think there's a lot of momentum to switch back to kind of the normal way an empire, acquires resources and land. But I don't think they're done yet. I just think they need more cover. it's like a game of they tried to rush through and boom, 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 knock out a bunch of countries, and they got a bunch of them, but they haven't gotten all of them yet. And remember, North Korea is also sitting on something like $2 trillion worth of precious minerals. So, we may see another resource grab in North Korea.
Interesting. Now, the thing is, I just don't see how North Korea is on the table because, first of all, like the last time there was a fight in North Korea, China intervened, and China went and they flooded over the border from Korea and China. They flooded something like 300,000 troops over the border, and they fought the U.S. troops back, all the way back to where the line is now drawn between North and South Korea. And then there was some type of armistice that was agreed upon, and the war pretty much ended. I think that was maybe the last time that we've ever fought China, and that may be the only time we've ever fought China. I'd have to go back and look and check again, but I don't recall another time where the U.S. has ever fought China directly.
No, by attacking Japan, we actually helped salvage or save China. I mean, who knows if China would even exist today if we hadn't gotten involved fighting Japan and occupying them in that way.
Yeah, we definitely were fighting alongside China in World War II, but after World War II, similarly to how we were fighting alongside the USSR in World War II, that's. They basically, fought each other only that one time in Korea. If the United States tried to go back into North Korea nowadays, China's much stronger than it was back then. So I think that I don't think China would stand for it. I really don't. China doesn't want us right up on their borders like that. So I don't think they would let it happen. What I do think this is just more, just like you said, DB. I think it is jockeying, and they're just, trying to place their pieces on the chessboard. I think maybe the deep state angle here is you build up against this phony threat of Russia because, again, I don't know how many times I've got to say this. Russia is not a legitimate threat, conventionally speaking, to the United States. Sure,
they have nothing to gain by attacking us.
No, they don't. And if it turned into a nuclear exchange, then it's just mutually assured destruction. Each country has enough nukes to wipe basically the whole world out. So that's not really something that's going to happen, I don't think. Hopefully not. Anyway, it's just
Russia just can't lose Syria. That's the thing. They can't lose that water port.
Yeah, economically speaking, geopolitically speaking, in the short term, Russia does not want to lose Syria. So what I think maybe a theory that I'm now considering, again, I don't know exactly where I stand on this yet, but something I'm thinking about is, possibly the deep state is building up against this phony Russian threat, when in reality the buildup is obviously the intention is to use it to contain China. But maybe they don't want to kind of show their hand. They want to pretend that it's against Russia and that, Russia. But in reality, there's an alternate reason for the buildup because, we're moving troops and we're moving aircraft carriers and we're moving, chess pieces all around the board, and they're all being shifted somewhere near China in the general area over there. And so, this Silk Road thing, it's so much bigger than anybody wants to admit. I mean, what we're talking about here is a whole new economic order of things. And here's the interesting thing, too, that the way China has set up this railroad is I guess you can kind of say it's open source. Any country is able to join in and become a partner with it. And so basically it's going to enable overland shipping like never before, like you've never seen before, across the entire, more than half of the entire world. I mean, this thing is connecting Africa with the Middle East, with Europe, with Asia. and China is basically dumping billions and billions of dollars into developing. I mean, you guys have been hearing about Chinese development in Africa for a long time, right? China's been working down there in Africa. See, China sends economy and armies of workers to Asia or to Africa, not armies, not military. Like the United States sends military to places. China's been sending economists and engineers and construction workers into Africa and the Middle East, and they're building up a bunch of infrastructure, and we're kind of sitting around with a bunch of military bases and drones and shit like, well, what the hell? You know, what are we going to do? I mean, we let them build it and then we take it from them after? I mean, is that the plan? But it's a whole different outlook, and I guess maybe this goes historical, because looking back at China, I also can't recall many times in history where they've gone out and like invaded other countries. They don't do that very often. Throughout history, you know, China's one of the oldest cultures in the world. And I think many times it's kind of just the wars that they have are internal, and one dynasty will take over a part of another dynasty. I was doing some reading on it the other night, you know, about the some of the people up in like Nepal and stuff like that in those regions, and how it's kind of controversial how China asserts itself in those areas. But you know, most of what I've seen from China has been infighting or fighting between different areas within their country, or what it would be considered, you know, historically China. You don't see China going out and invading places like India or Africa or Russia. I've never seen China invade Japan. The last time a country tried to invade Japan, well, that, you know, the United States, but we never actually fully invaded them. But the Mongolians tried to invade them a couple times. It never worked out. So, you know, China doesn't really go out invading countries. And I think there's a difference in philosophy here. Deep down, what we're seeing is the Chinese way is economy. And that's why, like the old Silk Road was huge economy stuff because it connected Europe to Asia, and that's how they started trading all the spices and all the economy stuff that went on back in those days that led to all that cultural exchange and all that stuff. China's been doing that forever. They haven't been invading countries. They haven't. They've been, like I said, they've been the victim of invasion several times, and a bunch of different countries have fought wars against China. But they're not the ones going out and invading people. They're going around trading around the world and making themselves rich. And so what I'm seeing is China is just going about things the way it's always been going about things. Sure, they have a quote-unquote communist government or whatever, but I think the deeper things here are cultural, and the cultural stuff predates their communist government by thousands of years. China's going around building a new world order, economically speaking. The United States is trying to preserve the old world order with military strength. And so what we're seeing here is a clash of ideas. And that really is the battle that's going on in our time. And honestly speaking, I think the Chinese are going about it in a smarter way, because I don't believe in going around beating people up and taking their stuff, or beating people up and forcing them to take your stuff or buy your stuff or deal in your stuff or whatever. I don't think that's the good way to do it. I think the good way to do it is making good economy and making good trade and making good friends with people. And that's what China's doing, dude. Like, they're going to supplant the United States because our way of thinking is outdated and it's nasty. It's violent. It's, you know, the empire way of thinking. China is looking at this stuff from a smarter, resource-based kind of economic standpoint. And so this is going to be the big war of ideas, and I'm sure there's going to wind up being some violent clashes. I just hope they aren't too bad, because these countries now are capable of destroying not only themselves, but the whole earth in the process.
Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in. Full time 10 to 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing, but call it a reality, cause there's no illusion.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo. This is live through the stereo. stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know, through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.